I know what you're asking yourself. You're saying, Mike, how do I get my day off to a great start? Well, it's simple, really. Pour yourself a delicious cup or two of Blackout coffee. They're a great American company, family-owned, premium coffee, fresh roasted, and shipped out within 48 hours of roasting. Go to blackoutcoffee.com, promo code PDB, for 20% off your first-time purchase. It's Friday, 26 July. Welcome to the President's Daily Brief. I'm Mike Baker, your eyes and ears on the world stage. Let's get briefed. We'll start things off today with the latest provocations from North Korea, them again, as the U.S., U.K., and South Korea warn that the Kim regime is intensifying its cyber espionage campaigns in an effort to steal sensitive Western military secrets and expand its nuclear program. I know, you're as shocked as I am. Later in the show, Ukraine's top diplomat met with China's foreign minister this week to seek assistance in ending the war with Russia, as a new poll reveals growing support within Ukraine for making territorial concessions to Moscow. Plus, in a rare show of bipartisanship, some Democrats joined GOP lawmakers on Thursday to condemn Vice President Kamala Harris and President Biden's handling, or lack thereof, of the border crisis. And in today's Back of the Brief, House Republicans visited Washington, D.C.'s Union Station late Wednesday night to raise new American flags after anti-Israel protesters burned the flags and then replaced them with Palestinian flags in destructive demonstrations earlier that day. But first, today's spotlight. We'll kick things off in the Far East, where international concerns regarding North Korea are once again mounting as the Hermit Kingdom expands their hacking activity targeting Western militaries and nears completion of a new tactical nuclear weapon for battlefield use. Beginning with the growing cyber threat from the Kim regime, the U.S., U.K., and South Korea issued a joint advisory on Thursday warning that North Korea is currently engaged in a sprawling cyber espionage campaign to obtain classified military and nuclear secrets from the West. Their targets are varied, seeking information regarding nuclear materials, military drones, submarines, and shipbuilding, to name just a few, and that's according to a report from Reuters. While the West is no stranger to North Korea's efforts to steal sensitive intelligence, the Kim regime appears to be pursuing these secrets with renewed vigor. The advisory singled out a state-backed hacking collective known as APT-45, which has reportedly broadened its ransomware operations in recent months. They've targeted or breached computer systems of a number of defense and engineering firms across the world, including manufacturers of critical military equipment like missiles and radar systems, along with financial institutions, energy companies, and even healthcare providers. In addition to cyber attacks inside the U.S., U.K., and South Korea, the advisory warned that the group has also recently targeted entities inside Japan and India. Paul Chichester, the head of cybersecurity operations under Britain's GCHQ intelligence agency, that's the UK's version of America's NSA, said, quote, "The global cyber espionage operation that we have exposed today shows the lengths that DPRK state-sponsored actors are willing to go to pursue their military and nuclear programs," end quote. He urged companies and officials overseeing critical infrastructure to take steps to bolster protections to insulate their systems from cyber incursions. Yeah, that seems like a good idea. Along with the advisory, the FBI issued an arrest warrant for one of the alleged North Korean hackers, offering a reward of up to $10 million for information leading to his capture. The hacker is suspected of cyber attacks on 5 healthcare providers, 4 U.S.-based defense contractors, 2 U.S. Air Force bases, and NASA's Office of Inspector General, according to a report from The Guardian. Google's cybersecurity firm, Mandiant, also upgraded North Korea's APT-45 group to a top-tier hacking threat on Thursday in consultation with the FBI. While the Covert group has been active since at least 2009, Experts at Mandiant said their attacks have become much more sophisticated and far-reaching. Michael Barnhart, the Mandiant's principal analyst at Google, told the outlet Cyberscoop, quote, "Many advances in North Korea's military capabilities in recent years can directly be attributed to APT-45's successful espionage efforts against governments and defense organizations around the world. When Kim Jong-un demands better missiles, these are the guys who steal the blueprints for him." Now, the advisory comes as South Korea revealed on Monday that the North has nearly completed construction of a new tactical nuclear weapon that could be deployed on the battlefield. The South Korean defense minister warned, quote, "Although no deployment has been confirmed, development is believed to be in the final stages. The reach of these weapons includes U.S. military bases in Japan, so there is a possibility," he said, "that North Korea may attempt to use nuclear weapons in the event of a contingency," end quote. For some background, unlike nuclear ballistic missiles that have a massive yield capable of leveling cities, tactical nuclear devices are shorter range and lower yield, and are built for the purpose of attacking enemy troops on the battlefield. It's unknown how many of these devices the secretive Kim regime may possess, or what their specific capabilities may be. The Stockholm International Peace Research Institute, however, has previously estimated that North Korea likely has around 50 nuclear weapons of various size and enough enriched uranium to build another 90. All right, coming up next, Ukraine's top diplomat is seeking help from China in ending the war with Russia, as a new poll reveals growing support within Ukraine for making territorial concessions to Moscow in exchange for peace. Plus, in a rare show of bipartisanship, Democrats joined GOP lawmakers on Thursday to condemn Vice President Kamala Harris and President Biden's handling of the border crisis. We'll have those stories when we come back. Welcome back to the PDB. Moving on to the war in Eastern Europe. Ukrainian Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba announced on Wednesday that Kyiv is open to negotiations with Russia if Ukraine's independence and territorial integrity are fully respected. It's the latest indication that leaders in Kyiv are willing to pursue a diplomatic solution to the war, and it comes as recent polling data suggests the Ukrainian public is also warming to this idea. Kuleba's statement followed extensive discussions on Wednesday in southern China with his counterpart Wang Yi, underscoring Ukraine's growing interest in involving China in peace negotiations. This visit marks the highest-level engagement between Ukraine and China since Russia's invasion in February 2022. China has attempted to position themselves as a neutral party and mediator ever since the war broke out, but of course, they've maintained a close alliance with Russia through very strong economic ties, while also advocating for a peace deal that heavily favors Moscow. This contrasts, of course, with Ukraine and Western nations' demands for a full Russian withdrawal. Kuleba emphasized that Ukraine will engage in negotiations only if Russia is ready to negotiate in good faith, a condition he says is not currently met. China, aiming to enhance its global security and diplomatic role, expressed commitment to a political solution. Despite this, Ukrainian and Western officials remain skeptical, viewing Russia's negotiation signals as a tactic to force Ukraine into capitulation under unfavorable terms. Russian President Putin's conditions for a ceasefire, which include Ukraine relinquishing control of certain regions and pledging not to join NATO, are unacceptable to officials in Kyiv. Ukraine aims to restore their territory and secure NATO membership, goals that obviously clash with Moscow's objectives. However, a recent poll by the Kyiv International Institute for Sociology reveals that 32% of Ukrainians are now willing to cede territory to achieve peace and preserve independence, and that's up from 26% in February this year and just 9% in February of 2023. This shift in public opinion comes despite strong opposition from Ukrainian leadership, particularly President Zelensky, who has consistently rejected any territorial concessions to Russia. Zelensky did, however, call on the Putin regime last week to send representatives to a planned peace summit in November. Defense analyst and former Ukrainian soldier Viktor Kovalenko attributes this shift in public opinion to exhaustion and heavy battlefield losses, noting that the Ukrainian military has adopted a defensive posture as the counteroffensive stalls. Additionally, Western support appears increasingly uncertain, partly driven by the upcoming U.S. presidential election and concerns over potential policy shifts if former President Trump is re-elected. The polls conducted in May and June also explored acceptable scenarios for peace. Now, a majority, 62%, favor regaining all occupied territories and joining the EU without NATO membership, while 53% would also support a scenario where Ukraine cedes control of Donetsk, Luhansk, and Crimea in exchange for full control of Kherson and Zaporizhzhia and membership in NATO and the EU. The evolving public opinion reflects the complex and shifting dynamics of the conflict and emphasizes the challenges and potential pathways towards a resolution. All right, turning our attention back stateside, Vice President Kamala Harris continues to draw scrutiny for her handling of the immigration crisis, even as media outlets attempt to run cover for the new Democrat nominee. In a rare show of bipartisanship, 6 House Democrats joined their Republican colleagues on Thursday to support a resolution, quote, strongly condemning Harris and Biden over the ongoing border crisis. Despite media attempts to gaslight the public, Biden saddled Harris with the border issue back in March of 2021. The resolution, which was first introduced on Monday by House Republican Conference Chairwoman Elise Stefanik, accuses the administration of failing to, quote, understand the gravity of the crisis at the border and fix it, according to a report by the New York Post. On the House floor, Stefanik said, quote, Kamala Harris has failed in overseeing American safety by refusing to secure the border. She has proved that she is unfit to lead. The resolution noted that it took Harris, quote, 93 days as the border czar before finally visiting the southern border on the 25th of June, 2021. And that was the first and only visit that Harris would make. The resolution continued, quote, President Biden's and border czar Harris's far-left Democrat open border policies are to blame for this historic crisis, end quote. Now, the White House, along with Democrats on Capitol Hill, as you might imagine, were quick to hit back, accusing the Republicans of using the chamber to engage in campaign activity. Well, that's got to be a first, and claiming that accusations Harris was charged to lead the border crisis for Biden are false. Now, as we discussed on yesterday's program, members of the mainstream media have tried to distance Harris from any border responsibility in recent days, despite numerous articles from those same publications in the past describing Harris as border czar and stating she was put in charge of overseeing the crisis. Now, we also touched on a press conference in March of 2021 where Biden himself says he was tapping Harris to lead efforts on this issue. But clearly, the memo went out to the various media outlets, including CNN, MSNBC, USA Today, Politico, Vox, and others that are inclined to take orders from the DNC. And the memo had talking points explaining how Harris never had responsibility for the border. The speed and unanimity with which the talking heads and pundits on the various outlets began the same narrative, well, it was another example of how little regard they have for the average citizen's ability to think for themselves. These same outlets, talking heads and pundits in years past, all talked about Harris taking the lead on the border and her role as border czar, a term that many of them used. All right. The back and forth continued on Thursday and turned slightly ugly. A White House official responded to the resolution by accusing House Republicans of sabotaging a controversial border security bill earlier this year, saying the GOP is, quote, disgracefully siding with Donald Trump, fentanyl traffickers, and human smugglers over our national security, end quote. The official claimed Harris and Biden were the ones, quote, leading on border security, which, if you think about it, well, that contradicts what the media is now trying to tell the public, that Harris didn't have responsibility for the border. Who to believe? The numbers regarding border crossings, they tell a different story as well. As we've discussed here on the PDB, the number of illegal immigrants coming into the U.S. under the Biden administration has shattered all previous records, averaging roughly 2 million per year since 2021. All told, at least 6.3 million, and that is a conservative estimate, have illegally crossed through ports of entry and been released into the U.S. by the Biden administration with orders to appear in a court at a later date. We'll see you someday. Thanks for coming. Another 1.5 million, a conservative estimate, entered into the U.S. illegally by evading authorities entirely, the so-called known gotaways. All right. Coming up in the back of the brief, House Republicans visited Washington, D.C.'s Union Station late Wednesday night to raise American flags after anti-Israel protesters burned the existing flags and replaced them with Palestinian flags in destructive protests across our nation's capital. More on that when we come back. In today's back of the brief, House Republicans punched back at anti-Israel protesters with a patriotic display late Wednesday night, visiting Union Station to replace the American flags that were desecrated by pro-Hamas protesters who had burned the existing American flags and hoisted instead Palestinian flags in their place earlier in the day. Now, the gormless pro-Hamas demonstrators, some openly wearing Hamas headbands, flooded Washington on Wednesday ahead of Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu's address to Congress, where he expressed gratitude to U.S. lawmakers for their steadfast support of Israel. The protesters burnt American flags and painted graffiti on nearby monuments. That is their signature move, after all, saying things like, quote, "Hamas is coming." Seriously, you can't fix stupid. House Republicans, led by House Speaker Mike Johnson, visited Union Station on Wednesday evening to replace the burned American flags. Johnson condemned the American flag removal and the raising of Palestinian flags as, quote, outrageous, firmly stating that they would not let a, quote, terrorist mob prevail. Representative Derek Van Orden condemned the act of burning the American flags as, quote, disgusting and reprehensible. In a defiant post on social media platform X, Representative Dan Crenshaw declared, quote, a group of members, including many veterans and the Speaker of the House, took our flag back and raised it. Now, across the aisle, Democrat House Leader Hakeem Jeffries and Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg issued strong statements denouncing the vandalism and the promotion of terrorist groups like Hamas. Jeffries emphasized the critical importance of lawful expression and holding those who engage in disorderly conduct accountable. There's an idea for you. House Speaker Johnson labeled the protesters simply as terrorists in a social media statement, while U.S. Capitol Hill police clarified that the Union Station flags were outside their jurisdiction and therefore unprotected. Hey, don't look at us. They asserted that no flags under their protection had been removed or vandalized, so there's that. And there's no word on what the D.C. police were doing during the vandalism, since, well, Union Station is their jurisdiction. And that, my friends, is the President's Daily Brief for Friday, 26 July. If you have any questions or comments, please reach out to me at pdb@thefirsttv.com. Now, remember, to listen to the show ad-free, become a premium member of the President's Daily Brief by visiting pdbpremium.com. And, of course, if it's Friday, and I strongly suspect that it is Friday, that means another episode of the PDB Situation Report airs this evening at 10 p.m. on the First TV. And, of course, it's also available on all podcast platforms and our YouTube channel, at President's Daily Brief. This week, we're talking about the assassination attempt on former President Trump, the resignation of Secret Service Director Kimberly Cheadle, and the massive IT outage that stranded passengers globally and impacted numerous sectors worldwide. We've got great guests, and it's chock full of information and insight. Don't miss it. I'm Mike Baker, and I'll be back later today with the PDB Afternoon Bulletin. Until then, stay informed, stay safe, stay cool.